Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Newcastle City Council special meeting. It is 6 p.m. I'd like to note that all council members are in attendance. Tonight's study session will consist of a discussion on the preliminary 2024 budget. This is our third study session for the 2024 budget. And with that, I'll turn it over to City Manager Pingle. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council. I thought I would present from the podium today just so I can see you and talk to you from my seat. It's hard to present and have a presentation. I feel like I'm talking away from you rather than to you, so we'll try this. Let's go to the next one. So I wanted to just dive into the 1% revenue increase. It seems to be always a constant topic of conversation, so I just kind of wanted to walk through this top portion I just wanted to point out kind of what's in the preliminary budget versus new information since we posted the preliminary budget that we received from King County. So that's what the 1% allowed revenue, that's the number that we included in the budget as far as the increase from 2023, plus then the $15,000 for new construction. That's what we put in the preliminary budget. Since then, we've received property tax information from King County, where the actual number for the 1% allowed increase is the 6170, and our actual new construction value is 57,615. And so I just wanted to point out the difference there between what was actually included in the budget for a preliminary budget versus what we'll change it to because we got numbers from King County. And then just included the rate assuming the 1% increase versus the levy rate without the 1% increase. And then I also, I hadn't included them because I didn't think about it, but I did want to just kind of walk through what those actual numbers are. So for property tax, so the property tax number, revenue number put in the preliminary budget was $6,255,000. With assuming a 1% increase with the updated numbers from King County, that would change to $6,299,945. So an increase of about $45,000, just shy of $45,000. And without the 1%, it would be $6,238,275. So a decrease of just shy of $17,000. And so I just wanted to make sure those were in front of the council for the property tax. So this next portion, I just wanted to walk through. There was a request to be a little more thorough about what the 1% increase looks like and what that means. And so the first bullet is just pointing out for Newcastle residents, there's 6 different taxing districts. That simply means that there's, depending on where you live, there's 6 different total property tax rates that Newcastle residents would pay depending on what school district you're in, whether you're in the Sound Transit area and things like that. And so there's 6 different rates that Newcastle residents might pay depending on where you live. So I tried to just take a typical residence, so not the highest rate, not the lowest rate, and around the median value. And so taking that typical residence with the overall tax rate that would pay is $8.45 per thousand assessed value. Newcastle's share of that $8.45 for 2023 was $1.04. So a little over 12% of what you pay in property taxes. And so all I really meant by the simple property tax math is if we assumed everything went up, their assessed value, everything went up at the same rate, that would mean that your Newcastle share would go up by 1% because if everything was equal. So that's all the math is. And so then taking that home worth $1.215 million divided by 1,000 times the Newcastle rate is what your property tax would be for 2023. And then the 2% in the second bullet there is simply because we took the 1% plus the banked amount So last year, for 2023, it was 2% rather than 1%. And the value of that, if all things were equal, is $25.27 is what your increase on that 1% would be for 2023. That actual home increase was $26.32. So if you remember, the county assessor comes through and assesses all the property in Newcastle, and the 1% increase, we don't decide on how that's distributed. All we decide is whether we're going to take that revenue increase or not. And so depending on how that mix shakes out, your share of that 1% increase will go up or down. Any questions there? Okay, go ahead.
I see none.
So then this is the actual for that home. For what their total city, so we're talking, when we're looking at this, we're just looking at the city of Newcastle share of your property taxes. And so just back to 2020 and then estimated for 2024, what the city's levy rate was, what that total tax amount is for the city's portion. The total revenue increase, that's whether we took the 1% or banked it. So 2021, we took the 1%, we banked it in 22, and then in 23, we took the 1% plus the banked amount. And what those actual increases were for the Newcastle portion, and then estimated for 2024 for that same home, because now most of the single family home values in Newcastle dropped dramatically from 2022 to 2023. So that assessment for 2024 goes down. So that typical home's share of that would see a decrease in 2024, even assuming the 1% revenue increase for the city. Any questions on that?
Questions? No, we're good.
Okay. This was just for information's sake, as far as where city levy rates are. Several cities like us don't have a fire levy on top of their regular property tax levy. So this just shows total city levy rates. So if you have a fire levy, or if you have an additional public safety levy or whatever it was, this is the total city levy that cities for 2023. And so it's just to show who we're close to, who's high, who's low. It's just for information's sake. So then this goes to the city's overall property tax revenue. So that top line is just historical through this year and what our estimate for 2023 is, and then based on that, what our projections would look like. One thing that we'll want to keep an eye on is the new construction numbers, just because that assumes that we continue to build at a similar rate that we built this year or over the last year, which was slowed down from what it had been, but also it had been going gangbusters for a little bit there as we came out of COVID. And so that's something that we will want to keep an eye on. Any questions on that?
Nope.
Okay. Sales tax. So these were harder to get on, make them fit nice on a slide, and so these are broken out a little more. This just shows historical sales tax, breaking that out between online sales, local retail, and then the construction, and then the overall. And so it wasn't until 2019 that anything like that was broken out. That's why you don't have the online and local totals for 2018. You just have the total and the construction. I think something that you can see looking towards 2023 and just having numbers through August is that certainly online sales seem to be the biggest increaser now that that's a thing, and we get online sales. Hasn't been as strong in 2023, but is still the strongest item. And then certainly you can see from 2023 as you get into the construction line, construction sales tax has been lagging as building has been lagging. And so that's what it is. Let's go to the next. So this is just projected for the current year. We are very hopeful that just as things tend to come up a bit at the end of the year, with our sales tax, we're getting sales tax turnover from the Department of Revenue on a 2-month delay. And so really what you have through August is November through June sales tax turnover. And so we're still then getting summertime sales tax numbers for the next couple of months, which tends to go up. So we're I think 1.78 million as far as total projected is a safe number. We're super hopeful that it'll be higher, just with the generally the next few months will be the highest months of the year. So any questions about that?
No.
Right.
Quiet group tonight.
Correct.
Councilmember Charbonneau.
Sorry, thank you. I noticed for our projection is flat for construction sales tax construction revenue. Do we think that's the case, or can you kind of like explain the logic there? Because I think that's something that can be a little volatile.
It is. So if you go to the next, Jeff, this is what you're talking about. It's all flat.
Yeah.
And that's just kind of taking flattening everything out approach, just because it's hard to predict. So we're trying to take something that goes like this and put it on a line. And so that's the approach there. And really that's just because that was the approach in the materials that we have and the spreadsheets that we have. And so we didn't make a change on that just yet.
Thank you.
Anyone else? All right, go ahead.
Go next. Development revenue. So top side is just the general development revenue budget as far as your big tranches of things. And then just based on the current reality, it's a challenge to predict development revenue, just because so much of it's based on the timing of development. And like we've experienced this year, we had pretty aggressive revenue projections. We're not anywhere close to those in the current year. And but building is starting to pick up towards the end of the year. We hope that continues into 2024. But we're definitely, as you'll see as we get into the revenue light items, we're trying to be more cautious for 2024 than we were for 2023, just because our development revenue numbers are so low this year. Let's go next. This is, again, just in there for your information, just the major projects that we have going and what the units look like, and then just kind of the potential or projected timing of those. But again, on the revenue side, we're trying to be cautious about how aggressive we are with that. Again, just showing you historical, primarily for historical purposes. I think you can see from the historical that it's pretty up and down, and so as we move forward, we want to. Part of it is probably just Director Hoffman and me getting used to the ebb and flow in Newcastle, but we're trying to be cautious about that as we move forward. Projected for the end of the year, again, over the last 6 weeks or so, definitely seen an uptick in development activity and revenue coming in. And so we definitely, the last 3 or 4 months of the year are going to be stronger than the rest of the year. And so we're hopeful that that'll keep coming in through 2023. Before we get into more general things, any questions, comments, Anything we want to talk about on the, we wanted to hit specifically on property tax, sales tax, development revenue, as those are the biggest revenue sources we have.
Anyone? Deputy Mayor Sherlock.
Thank you, Mayor Newing. So, I guess, I don't know who's doing the slides, but if you go back to slide 3, so looking at this, what I'm seeing is the council doesn't really have a great ability to control whether or not our property taxes go up or down.
Yeah, that's true. One of the things I meant to point out, I went right past it, was the highest year for single family, for a typical single family home was the year that we banked the 1%. And again, that's not something that the city has control over. That's based on the county assessor and how everything shakes out and who's carrying what share of that increase.
Okay.
And a lot of it's voter initiatives that add to our property taxes and school levies. That's a big part of it.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Go ahead.
I also wanted to ask about, so on slide 10, the development revenue, the projects. I've heard before you came and Mark came to the city, I've heard discussion in finance committee about how it's not normal how Newcastle does it, where we track every project. Is that true in your guys' opinion? Is there a better way to be tracking the development revenue?
I've seen it done both ways. A lot of it depends on what, a big lift with that is building out kind of the spreadsheets and the format and the template to do that. And so, if, when you walk into a place and it's there, we have to update that and make sure it's accurate and things like that. Where it's not there, it's hard to develop and it's hard to build. I definitely think we look at it with the council on a level of detail that I haven't experienced in the past. I don't know, but Mark, if you have anything to add.
Yeah, a little bit different characterization for Newcastle. Every city I've worked at, the council and the public wanted some information on major projects. I've never included short plats, but for this community, those have an impact. So it's a little bit more granular, but that information is normally provided from community development.
All right, I think we're good.
Okay. Yeah, the slide before is just an overview slide, but you can go to next. Wanted to get into the details. So again, if you have that, if you're working off of the extra funding sources we gave you the last meeting, that's the page numbers we're using. And so just wanted to walk through what the major changes were. And one that I missed, right, that should be right at the very top, was the criminal justice sales tax. That's actually a source of revenue that's coming in very strong. We increased that budget for the preliminary about $31,000 from just shy of $450,000 to $480,000, just based on how that source is trending. But I didn't have that included in the slide, and so our 2023 budget for that is $448,500, I think, and that's coming in really strong. It came in strong in 22. It's coming in strong this year, and so we upped that to 480 for 2024. The AT&T W4 tower, that I think that was just left out last year inadvertently. That's it's one of the contracts we have that we get annually. It's not on a quarterly or a monthly basis that we get that turnover. And so I think it got missed last year, so we're adding that back in. That's why the big increase, because it was 0 and now it's 8,600. So for all the development revenue, I kind of put all of the things that we were reducing together and then all the things that we were increasing together. And so really with the building, plumbing, mechanical, and plan check fees, all of those were super aggressive, assuming a lot more building going on in 2023 than has actually happened. So really bringing those down to be a little more cautious in 2024, but also realizing what we still have on the slate and not wanting to bring that down too far. We want to be realistic with what we think we'll see. And then this with the right-of-way permit, subdivision, PUD, miscellaneous services, the rest of that tranche of increases is really putting those more in line with where they're trending now versus they were really low for the 2023 budget, and they're trending much higher. And so we want to we moved those up based on that trend. For the false alarm, that was budgeted this year at 18,000. I wonder if maybe we added a 0 last year, just because that historically has been in the $1,500, $3,000 range, and so we're bringing that down to where it is rather than maybe what we thought it was going to turn into, but maybe we missed a 0. For investment interest, like we've talked about, we do, as far as we know, rates are supposed to taper towards the end of next year. So planning on that, but also the main reason for the decrease is because we do plan on assigning that investment interest revenue based on fund balance. Rather than on a set percentage. If we did that, if we took that approach right now, a lot of money would come out of investment interest for the general fund just because of the fund balance versus the rest of the city's fund balances. And so we'll wait till 2024 to take that approach, but that's the main reason for the decrease. The increase for interfund service charges, I think we've talked about that quite a bit. So this is just the revenue side. We talked about the expenditure side at the last meeting for the funds that it hits. Again, there are eligible costs based on State Auditor's Office guidance that we can consider for that, and put together a formula based on budget share, and that's the revenue side. And then on the grants, it's just that we had a missing middle grant that was kind of tied to the comp plan update. We've received that money, and there's not another opportunity for it next year. So that's what comes off of the grants.
Any revenue questions? Councilmember Lacotia.
Thank you. So the inter-fund service charges, I know we are using it for street fund, transportation, parks, capital fund, etc. I have a question on the street fund. Majority of the street fund gets funded by the general fund, generally, right? Most, if there is any shortage there, all the money
Right.
comes from the general fund. So why are we using inter-fund service charges for street fund? It's like, and then we are using 565 of the reserve into the street fund. So if I look at it technically, technically the general fund, or you can say the budget is not balanced. Is that correct? Because we are still using reserves. Instead of using reserves in the general fund, and then that goes into street fund, which has always been in the past, we are using 565 of the reserve. So is it correct to say technically the budget is still not balanced?
I would say the street fund is not balanced.
No, the general fund is also not balanced because you would have taken the 565 into the general fund, but now you are directing that directly to the street fund. In the past, we've always funded the street fund through the general fund.
Right.
So technically the budget is not balanced because if you use reserve, it's not balanced, right?
I don't agree with that.
You don't agree that the budget is not balanced?
I don't,
Then why are we using 565?
because that's what the street fund is short.
Yeah, so that means it's not balanced.
The street fund is not balanced.
Yeah, but then street fund uses general fund. We've
Oh.
always used general fund for the street fund, for funding it. And because we don't have money in the general fund, we are using it directly into the reserves.
Right.
So that means there's no money in the general fund which used to fund the street fund all these years, is not able to fund it, and that's why you're using reserves. So technically, it's not balanced. In my mind, it's not balanced.
Okay.
I mean, this budget is, if you ask anybody in a finance sane mind, it's not balanced. So I'm just like wondering why are we using?
There's not a policy that says we have to use the general fund to make the street fund whole. That's just been the city's practice. And I'm recommending that we don't do that practice this year.
Yeah. So why are we using inter-fund service charges for street fund? I mean, because then that's like
We still have to provide,
artificially causing the street fund
to look bad.
look bad, and then we
That's
are
fine.
using reserves for that.
We still have to provide a formula that is fair and makes sense for the budget as a whole. We can't just decide we're not going to charge the street fund because it's already hurting. We still have to have a fair policy for the rest of the budget. So we can't charge interfund service charges to everything else and leave it out of the street fund as an operating fund.
Yeah, then we should not be using reserves for this. I mean, like, if there's not enough.
The only reason we use reserves for the street fund is because we have a policy that says the street fund has to keep 25% of its fund balance.
Yeah, because we don't have money in the general fund,
No, because we don't have money in the street fund.
which used to come from the general fund. Anyways, we'll talk.
Councilmember Griffin, did I see your hand pop up before?
Yes, thank you. My question is on the interfund. I can see where you'd be getting revenue from the capital funds, but if you're doing the spreading of the cost to different departments, and that normally it's going to be operating fund, yeah, that wouldn't generate any additional revenue, because you're taking it from one pocket and put it into another, and the cost is still there, whether you pay it out of one big chunk or if you split it up. Okay. I just don't know what the percentage of operating revenue that would be looking out there that I don't believe would show up.
Turn on your mic. Thank you.
Is there a question? I'm not understanding what you're saying.
Pardon?
Is there I'm not understanding what you're
The
saying.
question was, where does the billing of the interfunds to accounts that normally are operating funds, where do you get that money when you bill it? Let's say you take it from HR, you go from one place where insurance is paid, let's say the insurance is paid, and we normally paid it out of one place. All right, now we split it up and charge it to the various departments. Okay, if those various departments are operating funds, then you haven't gained any revenue by billing it to the different places.
No, you haven't. It's just a matter of helping the general fund move costs that it should share. It's not a revenue generator for the overall budget. It's a revenue generator only for the general fund.
Well, it's a revenue generator only when you're taking it from the capital funds, not from the operating, that would be operating funds.
Why is it not from the operating funds?
Well, because,
It charges SWIM.
You were going to pay it anyway out of operating funds. So now because you're spreading around to the different departments and getting money from them instead of paying it all at one chunk, you haven't gained any revenue by doing that.
No, you haven't. That's not the point of it. The point of it is to help the general fund out. It's not a revenue generator for the city in general. It's a revenue generator only for the general fund.
When you're paying operating cost out of operating cost,
Local government in Washington is required to do fund accounting. So everything we do is by fund.
yeah,
We don't pay operating costs in general. Everything gets divvied into the funds that that charges. So it's not a revenue generator at all. It's only something to help the general fund out.
Okay, so we call it a revenue generator, and it really isn't.
I don't think we've called it a revenue generator. I think it's an increase in general fund revenue that comes from other funds. It's the same as sending cumulative reserve money or REAP money from one fund to another.
Well, you've said it's new revenue coming from the operating and the capital funds.
It is. That line item, we didn't have an interfund service charges line item in the general fund revenue in 2023, and in 2024 we will. We'll have a revenue line item for $672,000. Sure.
Any other questions? I have a quick, silly question. The false alarm, and forgive me for going back a few years, this was either right before the pandemic or right into it, but I know we didn't get everything invoiced for false alarms, and I trust that is all up to date and everything's good there now.
I believe so.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions?
I think we're good.
Okay.
Go ahead. Expenditures.
Again, just overview slide. Go to the next. So the approach on these slides was just to show for that fund in the general fund what the overall increase or decrease was, and then just the major changes. The approach was not for the changes to add up to the overall change. The biggest change in most of the funds in the general fund was salaries and benefits, but I wasn't going to go through salaries and benefits for every single one of them. And so for the city council, overall, about $3,300 increase. And then the major changes, reducing professional services, that's essentially taking away money for a facilitator, as we discussed earlier in the year, and started putting our strategic plan together. The thought was that we could use a facilitator every few years rather than every year. And in the interim years, we would have more of a check-in without a facilitator. For the membership and dues, again, early in the year, we talked about Arch. Our Arch fees were about $8,000 more this year than we had put in the budget. And then with additional Arch increases and then ups and downs otherwise, that's the increase in membership and dues. Any questions on city council fund?
Deputy Mayor Sherlock.
Thank you. So I agree that we probably don't need to do a facilitated retreat every year, although I think it should be done after an election year, when we potentially have new council members coming on to the council. I think we kind of got off a year, unfortunately. But I felt like we didn't have one in 2022, right after an election year. And when we had one this year, I felt like it was really productive, and our voting record has shown to improve since then with this same group of people. So I don't know if my fellow council members would agree, but I would really like to have the opportunity to have a retreat, especially if there are new members of the council. That's just my opinion.
I would agree with that, because in 2022, we actually never had a retreat, which was really detrimental to how we worked together. And I think there is value added to have that neutral third party, at least facilitating a portion of a retreat, if not the entirety. Kudos to the facilitator we had in January, February, but that individual really worked very well with our council, and I felt the council worked well with that person.
other comments? Is
Any
there?
additional comments? Okay, good. All right,
Okay. City manager fund. This is where a lot of the decreases came from. So overall, $152,000. Again, most of that's salary and benefits. We took $5,000 out of professional services. A lot of that was for labor attorney services. I think we have sufficient still there for going into a negotiation year. I'm very comfortable with our budget that we left in there for that. Insurance, again, to Councilmember Griffin's point, the decrease is not because our liability insurance cost decreases, because now we're spreading it out to other funds of the city, rather than the general fund taking on all of it. Miscellaneous, again, trying to right-size some of our line items. We're not using what we have in there, so bringing that cost down. Our legal services, just based on what we generally use, what we've used this year, bringing that cost down. And then again, professional development is more based on the trainings we'd like to attend in 2024 and the cost of those. Any questions on city manager fund?
questions? I have one quick question. Is there a cushion in professional services legal just in case?
Yeah, I think it's still funded well.
You're comfortable with that? Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
City clerk. So just two of them there. So we do the community, this is where the community survey is funded from. And so we've been doing that every other year, and so 2024 would be an off year for the community survey. And then we took a ton of printing costs out of city clerk budget in 2023. In hindsight, I'm not sure why we did that. So essentially adding that back in based on our current costs. Anything on city clerk fund?
See nothing.
All right. City activities. The increase here is based on the decrease in salaries and benefits. This is the amount that we would set aside for contract communications help. And then we had increased the communications line item in 2023 when we added the communications manager position, and so essentially bringing that back down from where it was.
Anything? Nope. Go ahead, finance.
Okay, so total in finance, 182,000 again. That's salary and benefits, removing a position. We brought the professional services line item down significantly. When we were in between positions quite a bit, we had used a lot of temp services that we don't anticipate continuing to use. The state auditor, our budget had increased a lot for 2023 because they were behind in 2022, and so we're only able to do part of our 2023 audit. And so in 2023, they'll do our 2022 audit plus what they didn't get done for our 2021 audit. And then in 2024, we should be normal again, so that extra cost comes down. Any questions on finance?
Nope.
Okay. IT really is just the computer hardware and software. We're starting to get our devices starting to age. We want to make sure if we need to, we can replace them as the increase in the hardware and software. In the preliminary budget for the repairs and maintenance, there's a slight increase. I put the TBD in that it'll likely come down actually, just because by the time we put the preliminary budget out, we were still waiting on some actual costs. And there's also just some redundancy we had in some of our software that we were able to get rid of, and so some of those line items will come out as far as those software costs. And so we'll probably have a slight decrease rather than the slight increase that's in there now. Any questions on that?
Councilmember Clark.
I'm sorry, I'm going to back you up a second. Back to city activities, we were temporarily paying Kate to do work for us. Where are we at with that? Are we done with that service, or are we still hiring her monthly? How does that, what are we doing now?
So we have a ceiling for her that of $40,000 and a contract end date of the end of the year. Moving forward, we would plan on finding a service that was a lower rate, and we'll play that out and feel that out.
Anyone else? Okay, moving on.
So building and planning, so for community development, no significant changes for building. The main decrease there is the position changes. And then similarly, for planning, the big change is the position change. But then with that position change, moving professional services up, actually adding the $55,000 increase in the budget is more in line with what we're actually been spending in that line item. We've just had that vacant position that's been, instead of spending the salary and benefits, we've been spending the professional services. And so while that's an increase in the budget from 23 to 24, it's not actually an increase in what we've been spending for professional services and planning. And then, again, the professional development decrease is we got rid of a position.
Questions? Okay, public safety.
Okay. I missed one also. I missed a line item in public safety also that I'll point out. The overall from our amended 2023 budget to 2024, the increase is the $465,000. But if you'll remember, when we did our first budget amendment, one of the things that we had to account for was that we missed our December 2022 payment to the sheriff's office. And so we had to make that payment in 2023. And so 2023 has an additional $235,000 included in that cost. That wasn't necessarily a 2023 cost, it was a 2022 cost. And so that's why I put the actual increase in the column next to it from what our Exhibit B was for 2023 to what it is for 2024, and then considering the total increase, it was a little over $700,000. So the drug enforcement line item is down almost $7,000. That's based on the $25,000 we received in seizure money, and that has to be spent on drug enforcement. And so we've spent almost $7,000. What we've left in the budget is the $18,006 that remains unspent. So we'll continue to budget that cost until it's gone. The repairs and maintenance, the increase there is for, it assumes 4 of the license plate readers. So that line item was $1,000 or $1,500, and we put it up to $13,000 so to account for the license plate readers. The line item that I missed for the slides was the police reserve program, and we'll get to that in our public safety discussion a little later, but we have $10,000 in the public safety budget for the police reserve program. And then the police contract, again, that's the budget to budget increase. For our police contract, it was a 9% increase this year. Last year it was 16%, something that we should remain aware of. The OT reconciliation, so this is a reimbursement based on, a lot of things go into it, but the big chunk of it is, right now we budget for 11 officers and we pay up front for 11 officers, and then we get reimbursed for any officers that we that don't work for us for that year or for a portion of a year. And so some other incidentals go into that will change a little bit as we move forward. So then overhead goes into that amount and things like that. And so we had budgeted last year $275, and I brought that down to a $250,000 reimbursement just because we've just had the one officer all year long, where I believe went from 9 to 10 during 2022, and so we had a little higher reimbursement in 23 for what we hadn't captured. Increase in the fire contract, that represents 15%. And then our jail expenses have continually been low, and so trying to account for that lower trend without putting us in a bad way as far as how far we bring it down. Anything on public safety?
Questions? Nope.
All right, I'll go next. And then our public works funds. For emergency management, the main change is professional services, and that's just accounting for trending costs. And then similar with the engineering side, again in professional services, we have the added amount for, it really is kind of miscellaneous items, and so things that we need to get done and account for with our engineering budget as far as survey and geotech issues. And then on the parks maintenance side, with the soil and ground materials, just kind of a trending cost with our trail maintenance, and that's the main increase there. With our maintenance, repair, and supplies, again, going with cost trends and what we're seeing as far as our day-to-day and what those things are costing, and what we're experiencing as far as our total expenditures. The King County Services, I believe Councilmember Clark had asked about this at the last meeting, as far as what that was for the street fund, which was a little different. This line item for parks maintenance is the swim fund had always taken on the cost of swim fees for all city parcels, and we're wanting to just kind of right that ship, I guess. It's more appropriate for parks parcels to take, for the parks maintenance fund to take on the fees for parks parcels, for the facilities fund to take on fees for facilities parcels. And so this is essentially just changing that approach. Rather than the swim fund taking on all of those fees, the fund that takes care of that item is what's going to take on those fees. And so this isn't an increase in fees overall, it's just changing where those fees are getting charged to. And then the decrease in repairs and maintenance is just based on lower costs for our landscaping work. It hasn't cost us as much to replace our community work program as we had budgeted for in 2023. And so bringing that cost down to where it should be.
Any public works questions? Councilmember Clark.
Thank you. Are we still hiring Julie Casada on a temporary basis, or are we finished with that?
We're done with that.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, moving on.
So I put in the public works slide for a few reasons. I wanted to make sure it was clear what we had in the budget for public safety. I'm sorry, did I say public works? For public safety, and what's there now, and then really just put it to the council for consideration for whatever else we might want to do with public safety, as it's been a topic of conversation over the last few meetings. So like we just talked about, the police reserve program is in the preliminary budget. That line item has $10,000 in it. We have the license plate readers, we account for 4 of them in that repairs and maintenance line item that we increased for that $12,000. So $12,000 would pay for 4 license plate readers. And then we would potentially be able to do 2 more by using some of the drug enforcement money as long as we make sure that we can actually do that. And so the intent with the public safety budget was that we would budget for 6 of them. And so that's what is currently in the 2024 preliminary budget. Any questions on those items?
Any questions? I have a quick question on the license plate readers. So we were piloting, was it 2 of them? That when Chief came to council and he expressed a desire to purchase, it was either 2 or 3.
I don't think
Pilot.
we can pilot.
4.
Yeah, we were going to start with 4, but I
Okay.
don't think they're a pilot. We have to pay for them.
Well, yeah, no, I completely understand that. So this would increase up to like another 4 and then possibly 6,
No, no,
correct?
no, this would be total,
Okay,
6 total.
okay, all right, thank you. Councilmember Villasenor, then Councilmember Charbonneau.
Thank you. And the 6 license plate readers we feel would cover all the sort of the ingress and egress from our community.
I think we think it's a good place to start.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I was sort of just counting all the roads in and out of town. Like 6.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
We thought 6 is a good place to start. It'll give us, we'll be able to hone in how we're using them, how often we need to use them, where they go, if we need to adjust where they go. We think that's a good start.
Yeah. And this is a yearly subscription, if I remember this correctly, right? Okay.
Councilmember Charbonneau.
Thank you. I know we have the Q3 police report tonight. I just wanted to request for Chief Kajihiro in the audience, if you could talk again about the police reserve program in the presentation later, I would appreciate that. Just I want to go over again what it was. And
So we don't have the police report, quarterly report on for tonight. We have CIP and finance.
Yeah,
Is that,
on the agenda.
yeah.
I don't have it on my agenda.
It's on the agenda on the website for October 17th.
That was an oversight on our part.
Okay, I apologize. I will retract that.
And, I mean, feel free to meet with him about any questions you might have, for sure. I'm sure he's more than open to that.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, tell us about a new officer.
Okay. So, I really just with the discussion the council's had and the conversation, and then talking with Chief Kajihiro, he certainly would love to add an officer. And so I just wanted to put the information in front of the council, and you can talk about it or not, or whatever. But we contract for 11 sworn officers, including our chief. We currently have 10. We've been at 10 for a few years. And our police department does a great job. But it can be hard to fill positions, and there's times when we have to use county support or unincorporated to fill time. And from a practical standpoint, it would be great to move closer to having 2 officers on more often, just from an officer safety standpoint. So all that said, I just wanted to put, we finally got the cost for 2024 from King County Sheriff's Office. So the cost for an additional officer would be $254,000. You know what the budget looks like and what the outlook looks like. And so we just wanted to put that in front of the council for discussion if you would like, and if not, that's okay.
Any comments about it? Councilmember Villasenor.
Thank you. Do we, so if we were to have 2 officers on duty at all times, what is that staffing? How many people is that? So there's chief, and then how many officers?
So we probably would need to get to 13 or 14 total.
Okay.
I think when Chief Hauk put information together for the council before he left, his preference was a chief and 14, which would be 15 total.
Any other questions? Councilmember Griffin.
Do we get charged for an officer that shows up if we've got a situation, an accident? Our officer shows up at King County or Bellevue or somebody else shows up? Do we get charged for that?
No.
No. Okay. Didn't think so.
Any other questions on?
So and I would, if Chief wants to speak to it, I would welcome him to do so. But when we're talking about officer safety and the desire to have 2 officers on, it's really just if we have a situation or even a weird traffic stop, and we need somebody to come before we approach someone, they're not coming from Bellevue or Renton. They're generally coming from unincorporated, which is much further. And so we have backup, but they're not super convenient. And so I don't have the grand solution for the council or for Chief Kajihiro, but that's what it is. And so kind of Chief's request this year was just, hey, can we put it in front of the council, have that discussion, and try to get closer to having 2 officers on at all times.
Deputy Mayor Sherlock.
Thank you. So just to be clear, the slide that we're looking at is the top part. That's already included in this current budget.
That's correct.
We would have to vote to remove any of that stuff if we
Right.
wanted to remove it. And then this additional considerations, potentially adding another officer, that would be something that we would need to, as a council, discuss and vote during this budget season, because you're not putting that in the budget.
Right.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilmember Clark.
So if we wanted to budget for 52 officers, I mean, there's only 10, right? So honestly, it doesn't really matter if we budget or not. We only have 10 and they don't have anybody to give us. So as far as I understand it, that's the foreseeable future, right?
So I know that they've made progress in their recruiting efforts. I would be surprised if we got our 11th officer in 2024. And so we would be looking at a cost that then we're waiting until 2025 to get reimbursed for. But that's going to be true no matter when we add it. We're going to be adding that cost to that budget year and waiting until the succeeding budget year to get reimbursed for whatever we don't have.
Okay, any other questions? All right, we are at 6:57. Thank you, City Manager Pingle. If other questions come up about the budget, we'll follow the same process about send them to City Manager Pingle and copy me, and we can try to respond via email or memo. And November 7th, we look forward to bringing our budget back.
Okay.
Thank you. All right. right, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Newcastle City Council regular meeting. The time is 7:02. Will you please rise and join me in the flag salute? Okay, City Clerk Westman, will you please call roll?
Councilmember Griffin. Here. Councilmember Villasenor. Here. Councilmember Lacotia.
Here.
Councilmember Charbonneau. Councilmember Clark. Deputy Mayor Sherlock.
Here.
And Mayor Newing.
Here.
All here, Mayor.
Thank you. We have a quorum of 7 tonight. All right. Agenda approval. Are there any objections to approval of tonight's agenda as presented? Seeing none, please show the agenda approved as presented. It's going to be a long night, folks. All right, public comment. Before I open the public comment, I would like to turn it over to our city attorney, Curtis Chambers. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, everybody. And once again, the city is in election season. I've been asked to provide comments regarding state law as it relates to the use of public facilities and election campaigns. In short, state law RCW 42.17a.555 prohibits the use of public facilities to assist a campaign for election of any person to office or to support or oppose a ballot proposition. The Public Disclosure Commission is the state agency with jurisdiction to enforce this statute. The Public Disclosure Commission interprets this statute very broadly to include a prohibition on using the public comment period during an agency's public meeting for these purposes. This applies to council member comments during a public meeting as well. To avoid any potential violations of this statute, please refrain from making comments that support or oppose a candidate for office or a ballot measure. Please have your comments address issues related to city business or city functions, not campaign or election issues. This includes references to election or campaign materials such as letters, flyers, or similar communications. The city thanks you for keeping your remarks focused on city issues.
Thank you, Attorney Chambers. All right, do we have any members of our audience signed up for public comment? Okay, we do not. Anybody virtually tonight, Director Bronze?
No, Madam Mayor.
All right, thank you. I'll close the public comment. We have no ceremonial presentations. Council comment. Councilmember Clark, do you want to kick us off?
Thank you. Just a reminder about Veterans Day service. I sent a memo to the city clerk, and I'm sure that'll get published, but November 11th at 8 a.m.
Okay, Councilmember Charbonneau.
Thank you. Yeah, I wanted to highlight something in our sort of the update we get every week from our city manager, Scott Pingle, that I thought would be great for the general public to hear. So I know people ask me quite a lot, why is it that we contract with Mercer Island for court services? This is something that I sort of figured out actually gave us a very good, deal, right? The amount of revenue that we bring in from traffic tickets is not as much as it would cost to provide the on-court services. So we get a really great deal working with the city of Mercer Island for providing those court services. And we figured out recently that we're expecting the city of Mercer Island, one of the most common complaints that we get is, oh, why do I have to go pay or contest my traffic ticket? Not even in Newcastle. But it looks like they might be moving in here soon and actually using our Newcastle chambers, which I think is great. We only, get as much use out of this room as we can. And it's closer for folks that are in Newcastle. So I think it's a really great thing. That's something I want to highlight for folks that are listening. And I just saw it. I thought it was a net positive and would hate for it to go sort of not talked about.
Thank you. Councilmember Lacotia.
No comments, thank you.
Councilmember Villasenor.
Thank you. This weekend I had a chance to stop by the Bellevue Fire Department open house. Whenever they put that stove in the parking lot, they're going to light that thing on fire. So, the kitchen fire demonstration is particularly exciting, and hopefully no one ever has to deal with that in real life. But while I was there, I did happen to meet a young firefighter who had moved from Texas about 6 months ago. I asked him how he was adjusting, and he said all basically the typical things like, I miss my favorite food, Luckily, the weather here was nicer this summer than it was in Texas. You know, things like, things are maybe a little bit more expensive here, you know, things that we're pretty used to seeing. But he really made a point to let me know how welcome he felt in our community. And that was really nice to hear. So he was happy to be here, and I'm happy that he's here. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Griffin.
No comment.
Deputy Mayor Sherlock.
Just wanted to thank the Newcastle Fruit and Produce stand for putting on Boo Castle this weekend. It was really fun. I went with, my children are actually at the age where they're volunteering now. They're not the ones getting the candy, although they did get plenty of candy. But just want to say thank you. It was a really fun event. And I also wanted to say congratulations to our assistant planner, Tyler Coyle, for welcoming his new beautiful child into the world over the weekend. I just saw the picture when I came in, and I wish him and his family well on this wild adventure we call parenting.
Okay, moving on to mayor comments. I unfortunately was not in town this past weekend. I missed Boo Castle and the fire open house, so it must be traditionally I go out of town in October that weekend. I don't know. But I would like to wish everyone out there a very safe Halloween. Remember, there will be children on the street on October 31, and please be cautious of the children out there trick-or-treating and having fun. Also, just a brief reminder, cold weather's probably not too far away, and our police department will frequently issue just cautions about don't leave your car idling in the driveway when you're not there, because it will not be there when you come back sometimes. Not all the time here in Newcastle, but just a reminder, I don't expect cold weather to be far off. And other than that, I will turn it over to Director Chambers. Welcome. You have a finance report.
I do. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Good evening, Council. So tonight we have a very exciting first-time quarterly report. So this was one thing we had talked about with the Finance Committee previously. We are used to giving the snapshot on a monthly basis, and we wanted to do something that was a little bit more high level that we could give to the council as a whole, and then also to the general public, so they have some of this information that you are getting as well. So tonight will be the first one, and this will be using data through Q3 of this year. This, one of the reasons that we chose to do this as well is because our financial policies as well as our CW require a report at least quarterly to the council, and we felt that giving the snapshot to the Finance Committee was not enough. So we wanted to make sure that we did a presentation to the full council. So we'll continue doing this. Our goal will be to get it to you within 30 days of the quarter ending, depending on how that falls and if the data is available to present. If not, it'll go to the following month in the first meeting. So for tonight, my plan was to just kind of go over the layout. Since it's something new for everyone, I wanted to go through how we prepared it, get some feedback from you on what you like, anything you don't like about it. If it's helpful, I want to make sure that if we're taking the time to present something to you, that you're getting out of it what we want you to get. So in the first section, it's just simply an introduction to tell you what it is, what it's for, and then also establish the timeline that we're presenting. So in this case, as I said, it's the financial status as of September 30th of 2023. The next section, we're going to jump into general fund revenues. So the first part is a table, and this gives us our actuals through September 30th. And then the budget amounts and the percentage that we have received of these revenues so far. We've condensed down a couple of them, but tried to keep it within the same kind of format as what you are used to seeing in the budget categories as far as which revenues that we're talking about. One difference that we made is that we have pulled out the investment interest into its own category because it's become a larger portion of our general fund revenue than it has in the past. So we kind of wanted to highlight that. The as of right now, we are at 60.1% total. We have 4 categories that are over 75%. Now, when I say that, I'm talking about that number. Since we are at quarter 3, our goal would be to be at or above 75% theoretically, because we're 3/4 of the way through the year. Now, it's going to change depending on the revenue source, because there are some that are received on an irregular basis. So it may be a little heavier towards the end of the year or the beginning of the year. But right now we have 4 that are over it, and they are unfortunately some of the smaller revenue lines. But when we look at this, and I put a note about this, and I think it's actually in the property tax section. So, but we'll have some things such as property taxes that we receive twice a year, typically. Most of it's in April and October for the first and second half payments. So quarter 3 is going to show low because we haven't started receiving the bulk of the second half property taxes by by September 30th. So with that being said, sales tax is doing really well. It's been on an upward trend for the last 4 or so months. Moving on to the next chart, this one is showing the budgeted amount to actual in a historical view. So what we also wanted to show you, not just how we're doing this year, but how we are doing compared to previous years. So when you're looking at these columns, each year is showing you through the 3rd quarter. So you're seeing a good comparable to where we were at September of last year and the year before that. What I really like about this measure is that you can see how these items are trending over the last couple years. So after these tables, we go into some details for each of the categories. And my plan was to keep the first part of each section is just simply informational. And I plan to keep that the same on each report, because if somebody's reading one for the first time, we want to make sure they have that foundational understanding of what it is that we're talking about. The second part of each section would go into some of the details that we're seeing as of this quarter's report. So for tonight, I'll go through them a little bit quickly just to give a couple examples. One that I just talked about was the property tax not coming in until most of it in October. So we're seeing that line a little bit down, but when we get to the end of the year, it should be looking a little bit closer to 100%. And then we look at development revenue. This, again, we've talked about a lot, is something that can be all over the place. We're seeing it pick up now, but as of right now, we're only at 63%, which is about $225,000 below where we would expect to be at this point of the year. One thing that's doing well is licenses and permits. They are currently at 75.5%. And this one, again, should be pretty close to budget, because these are fees that we're getting on a regular basis, either quarterly or monthly typically. Intergovernmental and grants are at 86.7%. This is good. We have talked a little bit about how state revenues are trending above budget for this year. And we also have seen a majority of our grant revenue for the general fund come in. Investment interest, as we all know, the federal funds rate is still remaining between 5.25% and 5.5%. So we're continuing to see that well over budget. We're already at almost 105% for the year as of just the 3rd quarter. And then miscellaneous, this is kind of where everything else goes into. So we have the facility rental fees that we get for the parks. We also have sponsorships and donations for our events and some other things. Right now it's at 83.6%. And as I mentioned, the biggest part of this is that we had a rental revenue received from a construction company in January that we were not budgeting for. And then we also have strong donations and sponsorships for our events this year, now that they are all back in full swing. And the last one is the transfers and other financing sources. So I lumped these together because transfers both of them tend to waver quite a bit from year to year. So the next section after we go into revenues is going to talk about general fund expenditures. So we start with 2 charts. The first one is showing the actual expenditures for each department compared to budget for this year. And then the table below shows the actual dollar amounts and percentage. So you get a visual format, and then also just the table with the actual numbers. So after that table, we'll use the next couple paragraphs to talk about any kind of outliers that we're seeing through the year. So obviously salary and benefits typically stay pretty steady throughout the year and pretty close to expected. But if there's anything that's would be considered an outlier or out of the ordinary for one of our departments, this would be where we would discuss it. So looking at what I have in there for the third quarter, we can see that all of our departments, except for one, are currently under 75%. And I think a big part of that is due to some of the changes that we've made and also just the efforts that staff have made to keep expenditures low this year, knowing that the problems that we have, not the problems, excuse me, but just the difficulties that we've had with the budget. They're trying to do their best, I think, in keeping expenses low for the city. We also have, one thing I wanted to bring up is that the public safety department shows at 58.4%, which seems good. But it's a little bit skewed because the fire contract we pay twice a year. So the police contract, we normally have a big payment about halfway through the year, and then it's monthly after that, whereas the fire contract is been 2 payments. So we'll see the second half payment coming before the end of the year. So when we look at the annual, it's going to be a little closer to 100%. And then I included another chart, so same as the revenue, we have the general fund actual expenditures over time. So what this is showing us again is for each department, how the expenditures have trended. And again, this is all data as of the third quarter. So we're looking at September 30th of 21, 22, and 23. And again, so what I like to see is that you can see how there's some departments that are steadily increasing. You can see some that have dropped because of some of the changes that we've made. And then you can see the ones that kind of fluctuate. So the next section, we just chose to do a higher level summary for the other funds because, as you know, we generally focus on the general fund most of all. And these funds don't have as much weight when we're talking about, revenue sources and things like that. The capital funds, as we talked, tend to ebb and flow. And so what we did is we have the revenues actuals to budget, and then we have the expenditure actuals to budget. And again, I have this in as a dollar amount and as a percentage, depending on what you like to see. And then I also included change in fund balance. And so what this is it's just saying as of the third quarter, this is where revenues compare to expenditures. So if it's a negative number, that fund has had revenues come in lower than the expenditures so far this year. And then if it's a positive number, then revenues have been more than expenditures as of September 30th. Now, when we're looking at change in fund balance, it's different than the actual fund balance itself. The fund balance itself cannot go negative, but it's okay if we have a negative change in fund balance. And I know we've discussed this a few times, but we'll see this often with maybe the capital funds where we have projects coming in. We've either had the revenue come in previous years, or it may be grant revenue that's coming in and it's going to be reimbursed once the project is done. And then the last section is simply going to be a conclusion. So we'll take that time to kind of wrap things up, give an overall picture, a little bit high level just of the city's status as a whole. If there's anything that we are concerned about, or if there's anything on the horizon that might affect the next quarter or two, we wanted to bring to your attention just to kind of be on the lookout. We'll put that here. And then we'll also include the cash balances as of September 30th. So with that, thank you for listening to all of that. I know it was a lot. But I would like to take this time to, if you have any questions, please ask. If you have any feedback, like the charts, don't like the charts, if you'd like to see something different, I'm happy to let this kind of mature and grow organically as we go over the next few quarters. All right.
Thank you. Councilmember Villasenor.
Maybe this will serve as my finance committee comment, but thank you so much, Finance Director Chambers, for this. Something we've been talking about in Finance Committee for quite a while, how to present this information. When we're in Finance Committee, we get much more, I would call it dry information, mostly just tables and whatnot, and we go through that. But what we wanted for the City Council and for the public is something that had a narrative to it. Something that put these numbers into context and made them real for people. I think this is an important tool. I think people will find it interesting. I think you'll learn a little bit more about how things work, and it'll generate better discussion. It'll generate better questions. And so thank you for doing that. I'm thrilled with where we're at, and I'm looking forward to seeing it evolve, because I think it's going to be a really important tool for us.
Any other questions? Deputy Mayor Sherlock.
No questions, but just wanted to reiterate Councilmember Villasenor's comments. I'm usually the person in the Finance Committee that wants more narrative, and this is really well done. So thank you. I really appreciate, especially the revenue part where you have that foundational information that you're going to keep in there. I think that's really important for someone new coming in. They have that information every time they read this. So thank you for thinking of that. And I personally like all the graphs and everything that you included. And it looks like, yes, revenues are down, but expenditures are down even more. So far, so good. Thank you.
Anything else? All right, thank you, Director Chambers. Director Bronze, what are you building out there?
Nothing right at the moment. And actually, I wasn't going to go through everything here because there's a lot of information, but be happy to answer any questions or discuss anything in more detail if there are any questions.
Any questions? Councilmember Clark.
Thank you. Just one question. It's getting kind of late in the year. It looks like you're still planning to do the Lake Bourne fishing dock by the end of the year, and is that correct?
No, not going to. Probably won't have it awarded by the end of the year. That's about as far as we'll get.
I'm sorry, maybe I misread the.
Does it? Maybe it says that I.
That's okay. Thank you for that update.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, sorry. I apologize if there was an oversight there. That was near the end, and I was probably pretty tired and just oversaw that. So let's see. What does it say? It says. Oh, right. Yeah, solicit bid. Well, we were going to solicit bids this week, and 2-week bid. And I just was looking at that today, and I think I might want to. We've had some challenges with the design consultant just being a little behind schedule, and so that's pushed things. And now just thinking about how to structure the bid, because it's unusual. It's not a construction project. It's not a maintenance. It's kind of more of a maintenance project, but it's also have some design elements because there's some investigatory work by the contractor. What exactly is the extent of the repair? So there's some sense of the bid to do an evaluation and then respond back, and that may then clarify some of the additional work. So basically, yeah, this actually was. We were still planning to solicit bids in October. And then award the bid at the November 7th council meeting. That's probably going to slip a council meeting as of just the last couple of days.
Any other questions? Councilmember Villasenor.
Thank you, Director Bronze. T10 traffic calming, you would have in the blue type, you have purchased 2 portable signs and install in different locations on a rotating basis. Can you explain the form of those signs and what spots and what we're hoping to accomplish with those signs?
Sure. In the past, we've used a radar trailer, which I'm sure all of you have seen around. And a couple things, the batteries have been, it's just the batteries wear out more quickly, but the bigger issue is that there's sites where the trailer, since it's about 9 feet wide, just doesn't fit. And there's King County's been using these signs. One of them, the exact same sign that we're going to purchase, is on westbound May Creek Park Drive, just west of it's during the project, we used money for actually, I think we used T10 money instead of T47 money, but it was installed. They put the brackets, and the contractor did that, and then King County put the sign in for us. The unnecessary detail, but the sign model is what we're going to use. It's it's called 18-inch is the model number or the model designation, and it's just a blank screen that will then flash your current speed, and it's usually mounted underneath a speed limit sign, and then the bracket is such that it can be just a key and it can come out, and then we'll put 6 of these mounting locations, and we're coordinating with the police where to put those. We have our hot spots where we put the trailers, but some of the hot spots for the trailer, there might be other locations that are more appropriate because we've not had the opportunity to put something in that's much more small footprint. So we can circulate that in a future update where we're going to put those, but we'll coordinate with the chief and then also MPO Treadway where to best locate those. And if it's successful, we could certainly add more. The approximate cost is about $20,000 for the hardware, the batteries, and the signs.
Thanks. I think there's still a lot of concern around 116th in that stretch between 84th and 76th. So whatever we can do to slow some people down through there, I think would be appreciated.
Sure. Yep.
Councilmember Lakota?
Just curious on, just out of curiosity, on page 6, the P004, General Park Improvement. So the new pickleball nets for Lake Boren, is that the 10,000 cost is just for the net?
No, that's this P4 is a general catch-all. We were going to charge some geotechnical work to that P4 because we established a new project number for the Hazelwood Boardwalk, but that's not authorized till 2024. So we were planning to do some pre-geotechnical work to kind of get the design kicked off. So we may or may not do that. That may defer to 2024. The pickleball nets, we were looking at these models that were about $4,000 that are they're steel and they're on wheels. City of Issaquah has a couple of those, but we're more recently just looking at some ones that are, I'm not actually sure if they're plastic or fiberglass, but they're more in the range of a $500 net. And they're not necessarily as robust, but we're going to try them out. That's City of Seattle uses those, and thinking they may not have as much impact to the surfacing of the tennis courts. So we're going to that's where we're actually looking at purchasing 4 of those, and then restriping. Currently, there's one pickleball court per tennis court, and we're looking at we've had other examples where they put one pickleball court on each side of the tennis court, so you have a total of 4 instead of a total of 2. But that necessitates getting nets, so that's what this whole plan is to do that.
And would that be like Q4, or no, you're pushing that to next year?
No, we're planning to order those in the next week or 2.
So that would be like $2,000, like if you're ordering 4 of those, or 500 each,
Something
right?
like that.
Okay, yeah, because I was like $10,000, I could have shipped
that's
some
not
from.
that's not just pickleball. That's the program, everything.
Okay, but would it still cost 10,000 or no? Everything, like the boardwalk
At
replacement?
this point, I don't know. That's an estimate.
Okay.
Anything else? Thank you, Director
You're welcome.
Bronze. All right. I believe in our audience, we have Commissioner Ed Flash. Are you giving the CAC report? All right, well, welcome. Could you turn on the microphone, please?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
The good news is you get a CAC report tonight. The bad news is it's me. So Nathan apologizes profusely. I got a call from him about an hour ago saying I am sick and I'm not able to make it. So again, he greatly apologizes for not being here. He wished he could. So we committed, I don't know, a while ago that we were going to give the update to the council every once in a while on what's happening with the CAC. And so this is our update to you for the end of the year. And hopefully we will continue to do that throughout 2024. And this is an opportunity for us to update you, but also for you guys to ask any questions of the CAC as I'm the representative this evening. But first, I want to thank you for supporting the CAC activities and for acknowledging the importance of creating a community in the city of Newcastle. So again, thank you for that. Thank you for supporting the events. Thank you for supporting with funding. And we couldn't do what we do without your support. So again, thanks for that. So we started out, as most of you know, the majority of the work that we do as a CAC is planning the summer activities for us, which are huge for Newcastle. We get a great response from our citizens, and not only just our citizens, but people that come in from the outside and support the city of Newcastle through that means. So we started out this summer with a little bit of a challenge, but I look at challenges as opportunities, and the CAC members stepped up. The city staff stepped up, and we got through the summer with some great success. What we did this summer, we had a Independence Day celebration, and for those of you who have been around for a while, I think it was the most well-attended celebration that we've had as long as I can remember, and I live very close to the park, so we always walk there on the 4th of July for those. So huge success. Lots of people heard really great feedback around that. We had 4 wonderful summer concerts that were also well attended. That's become a standard in Newcastle. So those are wonderful. And then Newcastle Days, again, was a huge success. I think, once again, from what people have said, it's the largest attended Newcastle Days in ever, or at least in a while. So a couple of things that we did this year, we had an expanded car show for those of you that were there. Hopefully you experienced that. I think there were over 100 cars there, so very, very well attended. We added an art fair component to it this year, which we've never done before. So we were able to create another new element to that. And then I was really surprised that on the stage, we were able to quickly fill up performances for the stage. So people really wanted to perform. They wanted to be part of the event. They wanted to experience what Newcastle was all about. I do want to thank, again, the CAC members. I want to thank specifically Deb Paulson and Amy George, who helped plan the event, or were the main leads for it. The city staff, the maintenance crew, Jeff and his team, everybody did just a fantastic job of jumping in and really creating a wonderful event this year. So thanks to that, and we're looking forward to a similar event next year. We did get a couple of feedback items from Newcastle Days and the summer events. We did a great job with communications, both pre and post. People were well appreciative of that. A couple of things that we could improve upon is more food, Wi-Fi needs to be enhanced in the park for these big events. The art fair experience, we had it on the tennis courts. Some people loved it, some people didn't. And then parking, of course, is always an issue, so that's something that we'll have to consider thinking about for next year. With that said, we'd love to get your feedback. So if any of you have anything that you want to express about the day, good or bad, improvements, whatever, let Amy George know, and we can incorporate that into plans for next year. A couple of things that we're doing now is one of the duties of the CAC is not only to just plan those events, but also to engage the community in activities and to inform the community of what's going on around the community. And that's not necessarily what we're doing, but also what other organizations are doing throughout the community. And so we used to have reports that came in, and so we've kind of gotten away from that. But what we did do is assign each commissioner to reach out on a monthly basis to various organizations around the community and find out what they're doing. And so as part of our CAC meeting, they report out events and activities that are open to the public or they're being put on by these other organizations. So that includes the Arts Council, the Chamber of Commerce, the Historical Society, Newcastle Trails, Newcastle Library, Friends of Newcastle Library, YMCA, and Aegis. We'd love to expand that list. And so if anybody has any other organizations that they feel like we should be presenting or bringing forth activities and creating more buzz around those activities in the community, please let us know and we can add that to our presentations. Our main focus over the next couple of months is going to be our 2024 CAC work plan. So we started that work now. We had a meeting, our last meeting was a working session to kind of define how we want to go and where we want to go. The goal, of course, is to present the work plan in January to the council, as usual. But one of the things that I want to highlight is that next year is our what? Oh, come on, 30th year. Thank you, Robert. 30th year anniversary. So this is going to be a big focus for us. We're going to plan some events around the 30th year. Certainly Newcastle is going to have that kind of buzz, and some of the summer activities are going to have that kind of buzz. For those of you that were around for the 25th, we had a great time, if you remember that. So stay tuned for some fun activities and happenings around the 30th year. Specifically, though, in the fourth quarter this year, Amy George, our events coordinator, put together a scavenger hunt with pumpkins around Newcastle. So you can access that on the website and do some little fun scavenger hunt looking for those particular pumpkins. The city was a sponsor for Newcastle Days, so I was not able to attend, but I heard it was a great event this last weekend. We're bringing back the Holiday Lights competition, or activity. So this is where we reach out to the community and say, hey, if you have a really great light presentation that you're putting up and you want people to experience it, then we will advertise that location and make sure that people know about it and they can experience that as well. And then we're doing a Songs of the Seasons event at Newcastle Commons, which the city is also supporting. Last year, we just had choirs from Liberty and Newcastle. This year, we have Liberty and Newcastle, Maywood, Tyee, and Hazen that are all going to participate. So it's a growing event. The whole idea behind this event was actually originated because years ago, all these choirs used to go to the landing, to the landing to participate in a similar event. And we said, you know what? We can do it here. So we're now expanding that, and hopefully that'll be a great event. So that's on December 2nd, so please plan on attending that. And then looking into 2024, right now on the calendar is a Lunar New Year celebration on February 4th. It's going to be at Risdon Middle School. And again, that's in partnership with the Newcastle Arts Council, the Newcastle Library, and the Friends of the Newcastle Library. One event I want to make sure you all know about, November 27th, is our volunteer recognition event. We cannot do what we do without wonderful volunteers in Newcastle. And so there are literally hundreds of people that put in their time, and whether that's an hour, 2 hours, 8 hours, to help the city of Newcastle building its community. And so we want to recognize those people at least once a year, and we should be recognizing them throughout the year. But we do have an event on November 27th. Yes?
Sorry to interrupt you. It says November 17th in the packet, and you're verbally saying November 27th, so I just wanted to.
I think it's the 27th.
It's the 27th.
Okay.
Yeah. Go ahead.
It's going to be at Resonate. We've had that there for a few years now, 5 to 7. I would love for you all to come if you can, and meet some of the wonderful volunteers that we have in our community. So thank you. Again, thanks for your support of the CAC. And any questions?
All right, thank you, Commissioner Flash. Any quick questions? All right, thank you. I apologize, I skipped over, I was following the blue highlight links and skipped over a couple. Council committee reports. Finance committee? Thank you. Econ?
Yes, thank you. Community Development Director Hoffman, were we able to get a slide for the signs, or? Oops, sorry.
There we go. What the council member is referencing is a meeting that we had last week in relation to wayfinding, and we didn't make contact with the vendor that was being discussed till today, so I don't have a new exhibit.
Yeah, no worries. So, thank you. So we talked about a couple things. One, we had a couple exhibits of wayfinding signs for the first actual time, which is great. We'll work to bring those back to full council so that people can view them sometime here soon. But we got a couple markups. We talked about specific locations on where we wanted them. We largely agreed entrancing and exiting the city along Coal Creek Parkway. Coming out as you're leaving the golf course, we think we have a lot of folks that come to the city for the golf course, and then we want to be able to tell them about services as they leave, and potentially along Golf Course Road as well at the upper part of Newcastle Commons. We looked at mock-ups for that, and the good news was that both mock-ups we got were a lot cheaper than the money that we've sort of allocated for that. So we still need to count in labor cost and some other installation costs and such, but the more expensive mock-up we got that we weren't as big of fans of was $5,000 and some change, and the cheaper mock-up was, I believe, $2,000 and some change, and we have about $250,000 allocated. So I think it's safe to say we'll come well under for that allocation, which is good news, of course. And then we had a conversation about electric vehicle charging stations as well, and how to sort of putting those throughout the city. And I was able to talk with someone at the King County Library System, and they're very eager to partner with us to look at electric vehicle charging stations at the library itself. And we'd want to look at doing them potentially for small businesses as well.
All right, and no salary and benefits committee report. Any regional committees? Councilmember Charbonneau?
Sorry, yes, I knew I would talk way too much here. So I attended the SCA Public Issues Committee. Big flags there. Just as we're doing our comprehensive plan update, they're looking at the comprehensive plan for flood management in King County, which I'll quote them. They say no one wants to talk about flood planning until you're underwater. So it's very important work. And they're expecting to bring back more about that and involve cities here soon as well. We talked about the legislative agenda for the sort of the AWC, Legislative Association of Washington City's legislative agenda, as well as the SCA legislative agenda, and all left comments there. There were some good recommendations by folks from other cities. And I just wanted to point out too, I attended earlier this week, along with Community Development Director Hoffman, we went down to Seattle for the first elected officials workshop for the King County Cities Climate Collaboration, K4C. It was really exciting. County Executive Dow Constantine called us out as the one new member. He called us Newcastle, the city that refused to be Renton, which got some laughs. And I was really excited for us to join. There are now 21 member cities, and we are the 21st. And it was just a very cool feeling to be there. We had legislators that were talking about their upcoming climate bills that they're bringing, and Scott, City Manager Pingle, included those in the email that was sent out to all of you today, so I encourage you to look at those. But we're looking at adding those to our own legislative agenda, things as minute as battery recycling to things more like using things like electric buses, school buses, covering a lot of niche issues, but important ones nonetheless. It's just really cool for me to sit in that setting and think, wow, we've never had an actual Newcastle person at this meeting before. That was very routine for a lot of folks. I know that might not mean as much to just people in general, but it was very cool and surreal feeling for me to be there and be able to be involved in that conversation. So I'm very thankful for that.
Okay, City Manager Pingle, you have a city manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening again, Council. Just a couple of things to touch on. In your report, for the city manager report in the packet includes again the City of Bellevue emergency culvert replacement. As far as we understand, they intend to meet that general time frame. I think we understand it to be they want to begin next week, but we have not received notice yet, correct?
No, the signs may actually be out there. I've not been in that part of the town today. They're expecting to start next week.
So just wanted to make sure that was on the council's radar and you're aware of that. The other thing I wanted to touch on was just where we're at with Mercer Island. Councilmember Charbonneau touched on it a bit, but we are working through finalizing an interlocal agreement that they would adopt and we would adopt. We'll plan on putting that in front of the council on November 7th. It's fairly basic. It just says that we're allowing them to use our council chambers if if court participants ruin stuff, they'll pay for it. It's fairly basic. And they are working through reviewing the lease agreement and going from there. But at this point, we're working towards November 1st start date for the lease agreement. They'll still need to work through what day they want to start actually holding court here. So we don't necessarily have a date for that, but they'll be responsible for the lease as of November 1st. And they'll make a few door adjustments to that suite upstairs so that they can have a pay window, and I'm sure they'll make it bulletproof and all those good things. So that's all I got.
Thank you. Okay, consent agenda. Is there any objection to approval of tonight's unanimous consent agenda as presented? Okay, seeing none, please show the consent agenda approved as presented. We have no public hearings tonight, no unfinished business, no general business, additional public comment. But before I do that, City Clerk Westman, do we have a planning calendar? I didn't have one. Okay, I'll just share with Deputy Mayor Sherlock, that's fine. Okay, no worries. So public comment, anyone signed up over? Okay, anyone in the audience wishing to make public comment? And virtually. Okay, I'll close the public comment. Planning calendars, City Manager Pingle, this is yours.
Thank you, Mayor. So what you have in front of you is November 7th. That's when we'll have the police crime update for Q3. Holly Kochi, our lobbyist, will be here to provide a session preview, and we'll plan on further discussing and hopefully coming close to finalizing our legislative priorities at that meeting. We'll have our final two public hearings on the budget. One is the overall budget, the second hearing on the overall budget, and then the other one is specific to revenue sources. And then if we're prepared to adopt the budget, we can do that. What we'll add to that is the Mercer Island ILA for using our council chambers. And then as far as upcoming items from an agenda calendar standpoint, or a planning calendar standpoint, most of the things that we're on for potential Q4 are really going to be January items, and so we'll look at what we want to do for November 21st and December 5th, but at this point we don't have a ton planned for those. A lot of the housekeeping items and such, really the building code delays from the state push some of that back, and so a lot of that depends on information that we don't have yet, and so we'll be pushing those items back. Any questions?
Any questions? No, I see none. All right, and with that, we're at the end of our business meeting.